Hello, welcome back. This is Cetriya, C-E-T-R-I-Y-A, and today we're going to talk about a little bit of an Inktober supply haul. So I still have a few items coming in from Amazon. I did my order about last week, so I should be getting it probably tomorrow or the day after. But I also went through some of my old supplies and see what do I have on hand that I could also use in Inktober. Just like many of you out there who are also artists, we're probably kind of like art tool junkies. We just love getting stuff all the time, and half the time we don't use it, even though you might be prolific. So I'm just gonna go through a few of my old stuff and also give some tips on things to just prepare, maybe give a little review of things, materials that I do use and how they kind of affect. So one of the quick things that I wanted to talk about first was paper on hand. Now I know that there's a little bit of a chatter about, controversy versus what, whether digital or traditional. Most of my artwork that you will see online will probably be digital, and that's mostly because I move around a lot and I honestly am quite sensitive to a lot of the materials that are used, and in the beginning, at least before a lot of these new alternatives have been coming out, it can get quite expensive, especially if you're starting out at drawing and stuff and making new illustrations. It'd be quite expensive to just test out a bunch of things to see what stuff would work for you. But now on this lovely thing called YouTube and Google and the internet, you'll find a lot of people doing a lot of reviews. So throughout Inktober, I hope to not only just record my process in general, but maybe have a little side comment of how do I do certain things, such as how to render black hair or dark colored hair with just pen and ink. So let's go ahead and start on with paper materials. I did gather quite a number of things, and they're more onto the side here, and I'll bring them in here. But first and foremost is your paper will affect how the ink lays onto the ink lays onto it. And there's a reason why different papers have different, not only just the textures, but its absorption rate and such things. And I'm not going to get too technical because personally, I don't get too technical. And also the fact that, again, I cannot afford to get that technical, but sometimes I do splurge. So let's say you're just starting out right now with the whole inking by hand, traditional, or just inking in general. Perhaps you are a traditional artist, but you haven't really done inks and you want to challenge yourself. If you're just going to go about doing some basic challenges for yourself, then typically what you would need is just like go to your local, let's say Walmart, or I think maybe like CVS or pharmacy. Some of them that has office supplies will have this, but definitely office stores will have it, such as in America, Office Depots and Staples and stuff like that will have this. And this is basically printer paper, but it's a very thick printer paper, and it's usually called cardstock. Sometimes you'll have some cardstock that has texture. The one that you want is the one that is extra smooth cardstock, and it would say that. Also make sure about the brightness. Different papers will come in like different shades of white, and you want it to be around 90, about 92 and higher. If it's less than that, it'll start to give you different shades of off-white, and perhaps that's what you want. Also, you want it to have a little off-white. So what I'm going to do is just show you a little demonstration about how this paper will absorb things. So for cardstock, it's very good for, let's say you want to use some technical pens, or let's see here, some Pilot pens, and okay. See, I got some Micron pens here. Got a lot of different kind of pens. This is a Prismacolor pens. Yeah, Prismacolor pens. Technical pens, and yeah, Staedtler. Staedtler? That's how you pronounce that thing. Anyways. So for technical pens, I personally find them relatively the same. I have not used the Copic ones just yet. So pretty much any pen that costs you more than like $1.50 per pen, maybe $2 per pen, should be a relatively good pen for use on cardstock. And for the most part, they come in different sizes. I like Staedtler. I mean, I do kind of like Staedtler because this is a really old pen, probably a few years, and the ink is pretty good. It's a size 5, so I do use size 5s a lot, size 3s. Okay, this is Micron Pigma. And keep in mind, the other reason why I tend to go digital versus traditional is traditional media has its limitation in the physical world. And what I mean by that is for whatever reason, supplies could be running low, the formula could be changed. All of these things have a variant, and I know especially for people who are into oil painting, when they finally find a shade of color that they like, they tend to buy a lot of it because it might go out. Or in my case, there's been a few brushes, paintbrushes that I've liked, and I no longer can find them because the manufacturer either went out of business, or the bristle or the fiber or the paper or whatever it is that they would normally use for creating this stuff no longer exists, or is so expensive I no longer could afford it. So basically, cardstock will get to where you need to do. Just be careful that some cardstock are not archival. What I mean that eventually it'll start soaking up and eating up your ink, and it'll fade in the weirdest of ways. If you don't really care about that, especially if you're starting out for your first couple of Inktober, these are gonna last for quite a long time. I have a number of cardstock here. So this is just like the regular like rolling ball ink pens that has this kind of a shaft. These are pretty good too. They roll on pretty slick. They probably are not archival though. Some may not. You might want to look it up. But again, typically they're about like $2 a pen. And I think they do pretty for what I needed to do right here. Okay. Did I test the Prismas? I bought this Prisma set, and I mean, on a short end, it'll do what I needed to do, but I personally, there's something about the feel that I guess I'm just so used to the way the Staedtlers go that I personally don't like it. Now, of course, you don't need to be too picky about the pens that you use, and that's mostly because since we're keeping things to black and white, you don't have to worry so much about bleeding of markers and such things. Now, I will not be using technical pens for the most part for Inktober. I think after a while I get really impatient where the line starts to like fade out and break. So what I'm planning to use is basically the basic ink and Calligraphers dip pen. Oh. Now, if you're gonna use this, I highly suggest that you don't use cardstock. And it'd probably be difficult to see in this video, and I might do a little close-up shot eventually. This is why I like using this, is that you can go very thin. Go ahead and use another spot. You can go very, very, very thin, and then very, very thick, or thin to thick. Now, I'm not actually that good with this kind of pen, but for some reason I feel that it's less limiting for me if I want to get some really nice lines. But I will say that if you're not careful though, and that's probably what really keeps people from using this material, but I personally find that I love it. It's actually quite cheap to get the ink, and right now I'm using just like Dr. Martin's Bombay. And it comes in nice colors too, so this one's violet, but I'll be using the black and white for this series. I think they're like $4 a bottle, and this is a long bottle. This lasts for a very long time, so, and I think they have other ones for like $2 or $3. So the Nihms Nib Holders themselves, this one is the old Japanese deleter one. You don't have to get this one. if you want to. It's probably easy to get it off of eBay or Amazon or something, but for the most part, I get the beginner's calligrapher's pen that you can find again at any office store. I've noticed they all have them now. I don't know if like places like Walmart has them. I'm not sure if Target would have them, but they might, because I think calligraphy is starting to get popular again. So pretty much you just like pull off the tip, and then you just stick it back on whenever you need to replace it. And right now these has been sitting on my desk for so long that they're kind of rusted in, so I probably have to go in and clean it up. And the other note is just the fact that how ink kind of gets everywhere. These are finally dry. And again, I'll take a quick shot about this, about how it ended up being very feathered out on the edges. Little other thing is that Bombay Dr. Martin's Bombay does sell a pen cleaner, and I think this too is like $4. It's about $3 to $4 depending on where you are, and I pretty much empty out half of it in some other thing to keep that clean, and then I keep the old one, and then I just like let it sit in there. Okay. Finally, the last thing that I'll probably use is a brush. But with the brush, it sits on top. And this is a very old brush. I'm for this demonstration, I'm just using an older brush. But I can get the line to go. So with brushes, depending on which one you got, you can get something very organic. Get this thin. Or very wide, very quickly. With brushes, I would suggest at the start you might want to buy something roughly maybe about $6. Yeah, $6 brush, round. The sizes depends on how big or thin you're gonna be doing your artwork. This here, I believe, let's see if it says it on here. This is a size 0, and I know they go down to like a 00, which is even smaller, and then 1, 2, and 3. Yep. This definitely, with the brush, you definitely need a straighter hand, but unlike a nib, you can move like fully rounded. So it's a preference. If you're gonna do this challenge, you might as well just get used to doing new things. And with brushes, of course, you can do like dry brush technique, very nice things, or really fill out. There you go. Here's some dry brush. All these kind of effects here. So all in all, like, just a set of cardstock, I think they are as much as a ream of paper. I think they cost as much as getting a whole ream of paper. A brush, pen cleaner, and if you really want to, a technical pen. I think packs of technical pens are about $10 for like a set of 4 or 5. Doesn't really matter what brand. And this probably would run you, say, about $30 to just get all your basic materials. This of course doesn't include like pencils and stuff, but I mean, all right, to the side. So now I'm just gonna quickly run through a couple of samples of more papers. Some sketchbooks that you get are actually pretty good with the way it holds ink, and perhaps for the sake of Inktober, you wanna do something pretty quickly. This is like my sketchbook of notes and ideas, and these take up the ink pretty well themselves. Let's do a quick little, I'm just gonna quickly test on everything. And right now, this is my first time testing out on this paper, and I can already tell that the edges are not feathering, so this would actually be a really good paper to use this pen. So I know already, I've just learned that for future references, I probably will start doing a couple of ink work on this paper. The paper is not too textured, so this end up not catching, but of course if you're using a technical pen or a brush, then that wouldn't be too much of a problem. But I'm really happy with what's going on. I can tell though that it's taking a while for the ink to dry up, but other than that, I'm pretty happy with this. So yay, I learned something for Inktober. So at Walmart, they sell like these very small samples of like Canson cheap watercolor paper, and watercolor paper, you can also use that. Watercolor paper, of course, because it is what it is meant to have a very high absorption rate. So with that, if you want to use the brush pen, you can do so. Make sure to get something called I think they call it super smooth or smooth hot press. I can tell right now that this paper is really nice. It's really luxurious. I should probably not draw on the whole thing. I think I'm gonna use the other half for something else now. But this is really nice. I mean, for 10 sheets for $1, it's pretty good if you want to just dabble into samples. So this brand is from Walmart. I'm doing pretty good. Oh, I very much like this paper. Usually you could only use one side. I'm not going to test out the second side, but hopefully it can be used because I like this paper already. So I'm going to keep this guy here. So, I mean, it's $1. Can't beat that. And then last is what's considered the more professional paper. There are several brands. There's Strathmore, and then there was a Canson, and I think there's another brand that's missing that is kind of like, I can't recall it. And then there's a couple of comic book paper brands, which is essentially the same thing, and that is Smooth Bristol paper. Smooth finish. These are completely archival. They're thick paper, high absorption, clean, and these are general purpose type illustrations. So you can do a little bit of watercolor washes on there. You could do a little painting on there. And of course, most comic book that, if they're still using traditional media, will be using this very thick, very smooth, bright paper. So as expected, I expect this to be pretty, to perform pretty well. The only thing is that Bristol costs roughly anywhere from like $2 to $3 per sheet of paper. I've cut this booklet down to half because I used to do some comic pages in this kind of smaller format. But if you have a little bit more money and you have done inks before and you want it on some really nice paper, then Bristol Smooth paper is pretty good. If you want a quick sample, I don't think they'll do this for everyone, but sometimes if you kindly email the company, they'll send you a little sample pack. They sell them in different sizes, and you pretty much could get them anywhere from a Michael's to Hobby Lobby. To an extent, some Walmarts might have them, some office stores might have them, but pretty much they do very well. So there's that for the inking parts. So have you guys picked out your theme yet? If not, I already have picked out my theme, and it's just a general overarching theme, and that is the theme of queens and subtitled Her Royal Decree. But something that I do kind of like, I started doing, especially for days where I don't know what to draw, is I just started making like a word bowl. So I know that my main theme is queens, right? So I'll just pick up something out of the bowl. Okay, so the word I pick up, which It's pretty good. It says roses. So I know that my main theme is queens, and then my sub theme would be roses would be in it somehow. Or let's see. Pick something else. Pottery. I think that's a really nice thing too, because if you then it's just like, okay, I take queen and then now I have pottery, and then I just go back to thinking about how pottery was used for decorating things. You have Chinese pottery, and then you have like Egyptian pottery, and they have so many styles and illustrations on the pottery, storytelling on the pottery, and pottery comes in so much shapes because they're beautiful sculpture that sometimes if you just don't know what to think about for your theme, let's say you're just stuck on day 16 and you don't know what else to draw, I would suggest just have like a bunch of like just words, single words, and you don't have to just take one. So I could cross the the roses from previous and pottery together to make one illustration, which would basically be a potted garden. So I can see that being actually a beautiful illustration. I think I'm going to keep that idea, but that might be a tool that you may never have thought of, to have like a word bowl. Last bit of section right here is just the basics. I'm going to be using a nib, so I'm using a lot of like metal tip G pens. You can use the American ones too. I think they're Hunt, but again, these were on sale for like, I think 10 cents a pack, because the school was getting rid of them, so I grabbed them. But as you can see, it's like, I think they're like $1 per tip, and I tend to hold them for a long time. Yeah. Something that you may have not thought of is Crayola. Now, Crayola is not archival, actually, but if you're just practicing and you just want to get your, you just want to fill in your blacks with something, you're still learning out, I highly suggest Crayola. One thing, it doesn't bleed through the next page, whereas if you use, let's say, a Copic or a Prismacolor, it will bleed through underneath the page. But two, if you're the type who use Sharpies for filling in your blacks and stuff, Sharpies, I think they might have come out with an archival version, but Sharpies turn yellow anyways, and they cost more. So for Crayola, you can get a pack of 8 Crayolas for about $1, depending on the type of year. I got this off-brand Crayola for 50 cents for the pack of 8 colors. And I just like them because I find that they do what I need them to do. Grab right here. I just find that they do what I need them to do if I'm on a pinch. So if you're gonna use cheaper materials and you just really want to get your drawings done well, and then you're gonna scan the stuff, then really you don't need more than basic cardstock, some Crayolas, some basic technical pens, maybe a brush pen and stuff like that. So yeah, that was my Inktober haul. I have random scraps of things: red lead, blue lead, black lead, pencils, all of these things. All in all, just think about what you're planning for what is it that you want for the challenge on your own. In my case, I am definitely wanting to practice more with my dip pens. I do want my artwork to be quite archival, because I've used dip pens a little bit, that I'm at the point where I feel pretty accepting of my illustration qualities right now, that I want to keep them. I have my word bowl in case I'm stuck. I have my theme as being queens, and I have my paper. All that I'm waiting for now, I believe, is just a couple of more fresh technical pens, and I think that's it. Some headsets, because sometimes when you're drawing you want to listen to some good music, and just basic things like that. So don't bother yourself too much about this challenge. We're just about a week away from it. I hope all you guys do wonderful. I hope to find out and discover some new artists on either on Instagram or on YouTube. By the way, if you have not followed me on Instagram, I am Cetriya, C-E-T-R-I-Y-A, the same as I am on YouTube and any other social media. So if you have a preference for Facebook or Twitter or whatnot, you'll find me there. Just Google that name, C-E-T-R-I-Y-A. Anyhow, thanks you guys for watching. Leave your comments below. Let me know if you have any questions or special requests, because I will be doing little tips and tricks of inking styles and rendering. So go ahead, feel free to ask, and I will see you in the next video.